Okay, 8th graders, today we're talking about domain and range of a function, and our essential question is, can you find the domain and range of a function? So first we need to define some of the words that we're going to be using. First, what is a function? And it is just a relationship that pairs each input with exactly one output. And all of the equations that we were working with, such as y equals mx plus b equations, they're functions because each x value that we put in has one y value. So one input for one output. The domain is all possible input values, which, as I just described, are all of the possible x values. So the domain is always the x's, and the range is all possible output values, which is all of the y values. So one way that I've learned to teach this is if you remember mix and dry. This can help you in science as well. These are manipulated variable independent and x value. And dependent responding y value. So I've kind of said, okay, the R, you can remember that it goes with the y because the range also is the R's. So that's one way to remember it. Alright, so finding the domain and range from a graph. To find the domain and range of a function represented by a graph, all we have to do is say, okay, the domain is, and the range is, and we always write them with these little brackets that are fancy. So all I have to do for my domains is tell what are my x values. Well, this x value of this point is 0. The x value of this point is 1. X value of this point is 2. X value of this point is 3. And the x value of this point is 4. And there are no other x values on our graph. And for the range, we do the y values. So the y values here are 8, 6, 4, 2, and 0. Okay? Let's take a look at the next one. Our domain and range. So my x values here are -4, -2, 0, 2, and 4. And my range, those are not good brackets. And my range, my y values are 0, -2, -4, -2, and 4. Okay, moving on, function form of a function form when we write our equations are when it is solved for y. So x plus y equals 7 is not in function form, but y equals -x plus 7 is in function form. So for it to be in function form, it just has to say y equals, which we're used to, so it makes life simpler. Alright, finding the range of a function. The domain of the function represented by 2x plus y equals 8 is -2, 0, 2, 4, and 6. What is the range of the function represented by the table? Well, my inputs are my x's, so those are my domains. Again, maybe we should label that. And my function, which they've solved for us here, and made it say y equals -2x plus 8. So all I have to do is fill in my x values to figure out what I get for y. So -2 times -2 is 4. 4 plus 8 is 12. 0 times -2 is 0. 0 plus 8 is 8. 2 times -2 is -4. -4 plus 8 is 4. 2 times -4 is -8. -8 plus 8 is 0. And -2 times 6 is -12. -12 plus 8 is -4. So my range in my pretty brackets is 12, 8, 4, 0, -4. And all I had to do was fill in my x values to find my y values. Alright, on our next problem, the table shows the %y in decimal form of the moon that was visible at midnight, X days after January 24th, 2011. Interpret the domain and the range. So, what does the domain mean? Well, the domain tells us 0 days after January 24th would be January 24th. 1 day after would be the 25th. 2 days after would be the 26th. 3 days after the 27th, and 4 days after the 28th. So on each of those days, or the domain represents January 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, and 28th. The range tells us that on January 24th, 76% of the moon was visible, 65% of the moon was visible on the 25th, 54% was visible on the 26th, 43% was visible on the 27th, and 32% was visible on the 28th. So the range tells us how much of the moon was visible and there's that ugly interpret word again, so we had to write a little bit here. And what percent of the moon was visible on January 26th? Well, that's not, this is 0, 1, 2. So at 2, 54% was visible on the 26th. Okay, on your homework questions, you need to complete the input-output table for each function and then find the domain and the range of the function represented by the table. Well, we already know the domains are the x's, so all we have to do is find the ranges. And if you just label each little section, that would be fine. So you need to use fill in x to find out what y would equal in each of these instances. On number 5, a factory that makes frozen pies produces 300 pies per minute. Write an equation in function form that represents the number y of pies made each hour. So 300 pies per minute, that would be times 60 minutes in an hour. So y equals 1,800 x, where this is the number of pies and this is the number of hours. And then you need to create a table where we have x's and y's. And we're going to use 1, 2, 4, 8, and 10 as our inputs. So you need to tell me then what's the domain and what's the range for your homework assignment. Have a great night.